And who are you?
I'm Jonathan Adelstein. I'm a commissioner here at the Federal Communications Commission.
Wow. And we're here with Andrew Feinberg as well.
How you doing?
So Andrew and I were talking several months ago, and he said, hey, we need the tech bloggers to come to Washington, D.C. and find out and see how this world works, what goes on in D.C. And that's where we're at. What's your view of the tech world from Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's about time you got here.
Well, thank you for meeting with me.
Huge impact on what happens in the tech world, and the tech world is what really is driving a lot of the economy. So those of us here on the FCC, myself in particular, really believe that we need to promote more technology, which has always been the reason that America's dominated the world economy.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're losing our edge in terms of our governmental commitment to broadband networks, to research and development, to education, to making sure that we have a workforce that's really able to contribute in every way it possibly can to the new economy, to these new high-wage jobs that are being created by high-tech industries out in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I'm an old Stanford guy, so I love it out there. I guess I made a mistake. Instead of going to the garage and developing something, I came out here to become a bureaucrat in Washington.
Interesting. How is the FCC changing? I mean, all day long we've been talking to different people, from the CEO of the Cable and Television Association to Ed Markey, Congressman, and we've heard similar themes all the time. But when I grew up, there was 3 channels on TV, and now we have hundreds of channels, right? And we're going into a world where there's unlimited channels on the internet. The fact that I'm doing live TV with a cell phone here, and we have pretty low-cost HD cameras, tells you just that the world is changing pretty fast underneath our feet, isn't it? And how is that changing your world?
Well, it sure is. Of course, for all that to reach its highest potential, you have to have fat bandwidth pipes into the homes, either over wireless or wireline networks. You have to have them affordable so everybody can participate. Otherwise, it's just a little enclave for the rich and well-connected, literally well-connected.
Yeah.
You also need to make sure that no children are left out. We don't want to have underprivileged children, don't have computers in the home, so they can't watch this way. They have to watch over the old tube and not the new tube. So we have to really bring everybody along with this revolution. And for now, you still see major domination by the old media. The old television channels are still dominating. You may say there's 300 of them, but as one senator said, there may be a lot of different voices, but a lot of them are coming from the same ventriloquist. You have...
Because we've had centralization of ownership of TV stations and TV networks.
We've had massive consolidation of the media.
Was that Dorgan who said that?
Senator Dorgan said that. And he's right. Another way to look at it is you have a lot of different water hoses, but they're coming out of the same spigot.
All the same stream, yeah.
You have a handful of giant media companies that are dominating the landscape of what you might call old media, and old media is proliferating over the new platform, the internet. I mean, you go to the broadband, and what people are watching often comes from the same place they always got their news. They go to their local TV station.com, nationalnetwork.com, newspaper.com. They may not be watching the same ads, or the companies may not be making as much money off it, but people are often going to the same spots. So you have a big audience, but the web is just beginning. I think we're at the very nascent stage. Those of us who are in the tech world tend to overstate how far along it is because we participate and read these blogs and watch these things, and young people do, but for the vast bulk of Americans, they still get their news and information where they always did, with a little supplement from the internet. I think that will change.
Yeah.
To really make that succeed, though, we have to make sure we have bandwidth for everybody, and that the internet remains open and neutral.
Give me an idea of the state of bandwidth right now. How many people have decent bandwidth in America? And I'm not even talking about the 100 gigabyte, lines that'll let you watch HD over your computer or something like that. But tell me what you're seeing and how much further we have to go in that.
Well, half the country doesn't even have a broadband connection at all. And when it comes to how fast they are, our average speed is half as fast as the average speed of the 20 leading industrialized countries. we are paying more for slower connections. Japan pays 1/4 as much as Americans do on average for 10 times as fast of a connection. So we're basically not where we need to be vis-a-vis our competitors around the globe. And these jobs are being outsourced overseas. The one thing about broadband is it can allow you to send jobs to those countries that have invested in their infrastructure, where the government's worked with industry to ensure that everybody is connected. We need a new broadband agenda in this country. We need an agenda that puts this at the top of the national priority list instead of at the bottom of the heap.
Well, it's interesting. We don't have one. We had that report released from, I think it was NTIA a few months ago, that basically said, "Oh, everything's fine." And I remember we were at the Tech Policy Summit, and you were on the panel with Drew Clark and I think Bob Nauer from NTIA, and it was interesting to see the difference between you two. And one side saying, "Oh, everything's fine, everything's great, the market will help," and then on your end is, "No, we need to make sure this happens." And I think that you're making a really good push. One question though, and this isn't really broadband related, but the competition related, XM Sirius. Some people have said, you're the swing vote on that because you haven't been really public about what you have to say, but is it a monopoly, or do you think that it's another media outlet that people are going to have easier access to because it'll be cheaper?
Well, first on that Commerce Department before, then I'll get to Sirius. The Commerce Department did say everything's fine, there's no need for any action, that our policy is actually a policy of it's deregulation and let the market work. I don't think that's a real organized, thoughtful, proactive approach. Other countries around the world are taking proactive stances to make sure that their citizens have broadband, be it Japan or Korea, and make sure their citizens have computers.
Yeah.
People in the Valley have to understand that all this is worthless if the kid doesn't have a computer. And it tends to be the higher income children that have them in the home, and the others have to go to the school or library, thanks to a federal program that ensured there are computers there. But what about making sure, like the Koreans do, you could go to the library in Korea and rent a computer for $1 or $2 a month? Why can't the Americans do that? Why can't we do what the Koreans are doing? And Japan has fiber everywhere. And we just have a handful of places where Verizon, thank goodness, is building fiber out to the homes, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
So,
do you think, talking about it, I've talked to some educators, and they think that the cell phone is actually going to get us there. Because I watched my son with his iPhone, and he has Wikipedia, Google, almost everything that I have on my computer, right? And it's in a device that doesn't need an IT person. It's always connected, and it's not broadband, so it's hard to watch HD videos on there. But if you're in a Wi-Fi zone, you can certainly watch some pretty good video on a device like that. And it's getting cheaper and cheaper to produce. I mean, I'm holding a cell phone that used to cost $800, now it's $500, and next year it'll be $250, and year after that it'll be $125. I mean, the pricing on these things is dropping so fast because of the quantities that they're making. Just in China, the telecom over there is selling 6 million cell phones a month.
And you can write it off. That's good.
But do you think? What are you seeing with wireless? Because I think that's the more exciting. Because I was on my son's technology committee. They're just not going to get computers for every kid. They just don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. They don't have the funding. If they had the funding to buy the computers, they don't have the funding to hire the person to keep them running. I've seen some of his labs where they've closed the labs down from time to time because they can't keep the computers running. But a cell phone has no IT guy.
Well, that's right. I think wireless is the way of the future. But on the computers in the schools, if that's happening here, I don't think it's happening in Korea. They have the IT people that can do it, and they are ready and able to make sure their kids have computers that are working in the schools and in the homes, and that the networks are up and running. Now, a little country like that with an economy much smaller than ours can do that. We've got to make the commitment to do it. Yeah. We can't afford to have situations like what you're describing in our schools. But I think you're right that wireless devices, if you look at the iPhone, is a real revolution. I mean, here's Apple making it so much easier to do it and making it look like a regular computer. It is a computer. I mean, we're walking around with increasingly powerful handheld computers that can do anything that a little laptop can do in just a matter of years. We need to make sure that the bandwidth catches up over the spectrum as well. And of course, the FCC decides where the spectrum goes, how it gets allocated. What we're seeing is, of course, a lot of the spectrum is being eaten up by the same companies, the telecoms and the cable companies that dominate landline, DSL and cable modem. We'd like to see some competition there, but whatever it takes, we want to make sure that there are high-speed networks that are available over the wireless spectrum.
Yeah.
And we're making sure we get spectrum in the hands of users that can deliver service at the most local level possible.
Explain, somebody asked me to ask you how spectrum is allocated and why not open it up to have a free spectrum where companies could innovate and take pieces of that spectrum without licensing it.
We have that in the form of unlicensed spectrum.
Yeah.
I mean, if the FCC has a success story that we can be proud of, it's that we did put a substantial amount of spectrum out unlicensed, made it available for use, and we've seen incredible innovations in Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
WiMAX,
The microphones, the wireless microphones.
wireless mics.
We're using one thing.
It's amazing. We're using two wireless devices right here.
Right.
You didn't get a license for those.
Yeah, I'm carrying two in my pocket right now. And back to you were talking about education and kids, and you gave a great talk the other day at the Point Smart ClickSafe Summit where you were concerned about targeted advertising in both the internet and in interactive TV. What do you think people out in Silicon Valley need to know and need to be concerned about, because they've got kids and they may not know what's going on in these rulemakings, and what do you think they need to be submitting comments on?
Well, we're going to put out an order any minute now, today or tomorrow, that will discuss sponsorship identification rules. In other words, when you're advertising over the television, you have to make sure under the law that people know who's pitching you. Yeah. You have to disclose that. Right now, it's not being disclosed. The season of American Idol had 4,500 ads in it. You didn't know that. You're watching for the first 35 episodes. 4,500 ads you were hit with that you didn't even know during the show. I don't mean during the breaks. And yeah, they might have been disclosed at the end in some quick little crawl that whizzed by in a shrunken, condensed version. We have to make sure that people really know who's pitching them so they can make up their own minds about material. And children, in particular, really can't make up their minds. And what the television companies want to do, and the advertisers, here's these very well-paid people up in Madison Avenue in their Gucci loafers trying to best trained people in America, went to the finest schools, and their minds, adult minds, are being focused on how do I get children to buy things that they don't need and their parents don't want them to have. Yeah. That's their job. And the more they can sell kids, the more they get paid. So they're doing whatever they can. They'll use any trick in the book. They will use children's vulnerabilities. Let's protect our kids. Let's make sure that we have rules that limit embedded advertising to children. And that's what we're going to be asking about. Now, when it comes to these wireless devices, you raise a very important issue. As they become the computer and the kid can take it anywhere they go, it becomes like the old radio where we used to, really focus on indecency on the radio. What are we going to do about things over the internet that are things that parents don't want their kids to see? We don't have any ability at the FCC, as we do over the radio, to control that. The Supreme Court said we could do it over radio because it was ubiquitous. As the kids going down to school, they listen to their little transistor, and then they get exposed to whatever indecent language. They couldn't use those 7 dirty words the immortal George Carlin talked about.
Yep.
But now we have a whole new issue here, which is they're going to have their iPhone or the equivalent, and they're going to be able to see all kinds of things that parents might not want them to see. So
and Patrick's over there going, I've seen a few of those things.
You probably have, and you might not want him to. Now, I'm not saying you don't have a right to that, but do you want your son to? And the big companies, I talked to the CEO of one of the largest telecoms in America just the other day, and he said their customers are contacting them asking for help, saying, you've got to help me, or I don't feel safe with your product, with my children. So we need to work with industry. We need to work with them because we don't have the authority. There's a thing called the First Amendment here, and we have very limited authority to control that, but parents want help. The companies want help because their customers want help protecting their kids.
Yeah. How do you, what solutions do you think are going to solve that problem? Because it's a tough problem. You've seen if you put Net Nanny on your computer, some stuff gets through, and then other stuff it gets blocked. That's actually that I want my son to look at. It's not an easy, and it's not easy stuff to set up. It's and to understand, and it doesn't catch everything, right? And the kids are absolutely adept at getting around these things. And
That's
if you
the
think
thing.
they're not, have a talk with a 14-year-old, off the record sometime when their parents aren't around, and ask them, just how did you get into that? And they're very adept, and the parents aren't generally as adept as some of the kids.
That's exactly right.
And certainly, if I block his cell phone from viewing it, the other kids don't have that block on, and they just trade cell phones. And now all of a sudden, that's how he saw some stuff that would have been blocked in my house. They went over a friend's house, right?
Yeah.
A friend's house didn't have the blocks on, and so you can't block everybody, because then you ruin the First Amendment, right? And keep me from looking at
Right.
stuff that like breast cancer research, if you try to block that. Anyways, we're wrapping up. What are your thoughts? How do you solve that problem? 'Cause
It's
a
really
deep
hard to solve. It's really hard to solve. It's like water coming in. We're trying to hold our hands up to the water, and it's flowing all around us. We've got to just give parents the best tools we can. The way to do that, I think, is for the government to work together with these companies, both software and hardware, to have consistent and understandable ratings and easy ways to make those ratings apply to these commercial devices. Right now, the parents are confused about what the ratings mean. They're not standardized across platforms, and they're hard to use. Why can't the government do for these devices what the iPhone did for the cell phone? Let's make them simple and easy to use. Let's have an iPhone of parental controls so that it's intuitive, it's easy to understand. You quickly put it down. If you're concerned about violence, you can control that. If you're concerned about junk food, you can do that. If it's sex that bothers you, people have different values and different things they're concerned about. Let's help them to set things, but the content has to be rated in order for it to work. And we have to work with the industry. There has to be a working
On my
partnership.
cell phone, I have an audience around the world who's asking questions, by the way. And John asked, what can each of us do to protect these consumer rights in the new media?
Well, it depends what they
you
mean by
also-
consumer rights.
yeah.
I mean, you have a right under the First Amendment to this material. As an adult, you have a right to material that we might consider inappropriate for our kids. And that's why it's so hard for the government to control. What do you do to protect the children? We need a working partnership with the businesses. I mean, we can't figure this out. I'm hoping that technology has created great benefits and also this problem for our children. We need technology to help us solve it. We need to have an attitude like what Steve Jobs put together for the iPhone, where he put together the smartest engineers and software designers, getting them in a room, and let's make a national commitment to trying to give parents the tools that they need to control what their kids are seeing and hearing over these new media.
Yeah. The advertising world's about to really dramatically change. Because in the old world, we had TV and you bought a 30-second spot on there, and you could sort of target it based on the content that you're advertising on. But the new world lets you, one, like Facebook, the demographic, right? When you come to my page, you know that I'm into skiing, and you click on the word skiing, and you can see everybody on Facebook who's also into skiing, right? And an advertiser could, really super target me as a consumer because of that data. And then they're putting tendrils onto each web page, analytics tools. Google's coming out with a social network. That social network is going to report back to Google demographic information about me. The advertisers are going to be able to target me in a way that they've never been able to do. What are your thoughts on that? And,
Well,
and where's the FCC going to go with that?
Well, there's real privacy issues here, and there's a balance, because on the one hand, there's privacy issues and people are feeling invaded. On the other hand, it's advertising that supports a lot of these innovative applications on the internet and a lot of the content that people like so much. There was a report today about somebody who learned how to block advertising. And what does it mean if you can easily block advertising over the web for new journalists, for bloggers who want to be able to go out there and make a living doing this, actually creating news, but if they can't get their advertising through, then they can't make a living at it, so there goes the news. You can't advertise over the newspapers or over the internet. We're not going to have the basis of revenue support for real news gathering, real blogging, real exciting, dynamic, entertaining content as well. So it's a tough balance between privacy and the need to have a commercial model that works over the internet. I think privacy has to come first. People need to be able to opt into certain things. I was pleased to see today that Charter decided not to use the information it was getting as an ISP to target ads at its own customers. Thought that was a positive step. That was a bridge too far.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you block all ads, and you're going to see happening to the internet what's happening to newspapers, which is they're spiraling downward. It's hard to get good newspapers and to have them have the revenue they need to hire real reporters.
Yeah.
So long term, we've got to think of a balance here. I mean, American media has always been driven by ads. I don't like them any more than anybody else. I've been the one to fight more than anybody else here on the commission to make sure they're disclosed so people know who's trying to pitch them. But on the other hand, without them, a lot of this exciting content dries up. So that's the balance we're going to have to achieve.
Yep, and I appreciate that very much. Well, we've got to run, so thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me. We'll continue the conversation on the quick cam, but we're out of media, so thank you very much for spending some time with me.
Thanks for that.